Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to get into Module 1 of the Financial Literacy Program. Module 1 has us dealing with kind of a basic introduction to economics and personal finance. The purpose of this module is for you to get a better understanding of basic financial terms, basic economic terms, different types of economic systems, but most importantly so that you have a very real applicable use of these terms and concepts. This will be kind of the groundwork for what we'll be doing in the next 5 modules, and so this is a good place to start. In any basic economic class, any basic financial class, there's a set of terms that we really need to master. It starts with these basic economic systems. In these economic systems, we're always looking to try and figure out how does an economy work. Before a country can define itself as one type of economic system or another, they must answer 3 basic economic questions. As you see on the screen, those 3 basic economic questions have to do with goods and services and what types of goods and services should be produced, how exactly those goods and services will be produced, and then for whom those goods and services should be produced. To put this in simpler terms for you, what we're looking at here is what goods are being made, what jobs are being created to make those goods, and then what consumers are going to have those goods at their disposal. The way that a nation answers these 3 questions will really define what type of economic system they have. Will they be a capitalist society? Will they be a communist society? Before we get to those bigger terms, there are some other ones that we need to identify for our own use in this understanding. Looking at these different economic systems can be problematic for some. We need to ensure that we understand the basis of where an economic system comes from outside of those 3 questions that we just answered. We start by looking at the types of economic systems around the world. I want you to understand something. When we're talking about economic systems, we're not talking about here in the United States alone, for we know that there are various economic systems in various parts of our globe. But what we do know, one common theme, is that all economic systems tend to fall into one of 2 broad categories. These broad categories may be a market or capitalist system, or command or plan system. Those of you who remember from your past history classes may remember that a market system or capitalist system is something that we have here in the United States, versus, let's say, the Soviet Union at the height of their reign had a command system, more towards a communist system. An interesting thing, no economy can be purely market or purely command. Most economic systems we know have elements of both ideas. What exactly these types of systems are will be defined for you in the upcoming slides. But understand, no matter what country around the world that we look at, we can draw comparisons of different elements from a market system and a capitalist system, and a command system or a plan system. A traditional economic system is something that we saw early on in here in our country and in many early nations. A traditional economic system is defined as an economic system in which decisions are made on the basis of customs, beliefs, religions, habits, and so on. What this refers to is that in these traditional societies, goods are often shared evenly, or on the basis of age and gender, kind of an honor system. The older that you were, the more established that you were in the society, the better access you had to the goods you needed. The older you were, the more food you may get, or you may have first pick of what type of food you wish to have. In some traditional economic systems, religion plays a role. Beliefs play a role, such as maybe women eating first, or children getting their food before the adults. So we see, as I said, blends of this type of system all over the world. The second type of economic system that we'll discuss is a market economy. This is an economic system in which individual producers own and determine the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. I want you to think about that for a second. In our nation today, do we have this type of economic system, or do we tend to fall more towards the traditional economic system? If you think about what the essence of an individual owning and determining the production and distribution of a good, you'll see that all around our nation today. You may have parents who own a company or work for someone who owns a private company. That falls right in line with the idea of a market economy. In market economies, products and services generally go to those who afford to pay for them. Think again today. Think about buying a car. When you go out and buy a car, you're not going to show up at a car dealership and walk off the lot with whatever car you want for free. You go there and you can afford to pay for a certain type of car with a certain amount of miles and a certain amount of years on it. And that's what you'll walk away with. The more money you have tends to get you the better car. This political cartoon kind of gives you an idea about a market economy. And as you see here, as you process this political cartoon, you see the man in the middle holding up a sign. "Hey Fed, prevent another disaster by bailing me out," the man says. If you remember back to the federal bailouts that we've seen across our country in recent years, the reason why I chose to include this in this presentation is for you to understand the federal government is directly involved in a market economy, for good or for bad. They are involved, and we see regulations, we see different types of bailouts as this man is referring to, but we also see other policies put in place by our national government to ensure that these types of market economies can exist and continue on. If there is no one overseeing a market economy, the individual producers could run wild and really set their own ways. On the other end, if you remember back to our first slide, we mentioned a market economy, and we also mentioned a command economy as well. Now, in the lower right-hand corner of this screen, you'll see a picture of Joseph Stalin standing in front of his communist flag, his Soviet flag, with the sickle and the hammer up in the corner. In this type of economy, we know is a system in which the government owns and controls all facets of the economy. Hopefully that rings a bell to you. Command economies usually satisfy the needs and wants of an elite class of people, which controls the government and the decision making. Therefore, going to the Soviet Union as the case here, Joseph Stalin and his government would control all facets of the economy. Remember back to world and U.S. history, and you'll remember that in those types of economies, the government will decide possibly what type of job you work, what type of food you'll eat, or how much food you'll eat, how much money you make, what types of clothes you wear, and even further on, what you can and cannot do in your workplace. Things like strikes, things like lunch breaks, even in some extreme cases, are absolutely forbidden in a command economy. And then we move on. So in a market economy, to review, people have the freedom to start their own businesses, to decide what they are going to make. In a command economy, the government would make those decisions for you. And then in a mixed economy, something that we see quite often today, we know is an economic system that uses aspects of more than one of the basic economic systems to create itself. We see aspects taken from a traditional economic system or a subsistence economic system. We see aspects taken from a command and a market system as well. Hopefully this kind of organizes it a little better for you. A command economy, a communist type government would be on the far left. On the far right, a market economy or a capitalist society. And in the middle, these types of mixed economic systems that we see a lot today kind of blend some ideas of the command economy and some ideas of the market economies to fit what their nation needs. I want you to understand that. Most of the time, mixed economies come as a result of what a country needs to allow their people to grow. If we know we're a nation that's coming off of a revolution, we probably may be hesitant to go towards a true market economy because people will have so many different varying ideas about what is best for their nation. If we are a long, established country and we're growing old, Great Britain would be a perfect example for this. We have been running smoothly for a relatively long period of time, so we may be able to incorporate more ideas from the far right. So we have this basis for what these different economic systems are. Now I would like to go a little bit into some of these basic economic terms. This presentation is going to bring up a lot of different ideas and maybe some pretty corny gimmicks as well to describe to you what these different economic terms are. I want you to understand, I chose to go basic with this because there is a lot of information being sent your way. The first two big economic terms that we'll deal with are these ideas of needs and wants. Every single one of you watching this presentation right now has gone through some type of point in their life or some type of situation in your life where you've had to choose between a need and a want. Going all the way back to your childhood. You may have wanted something, but you absolutely needed something as well. So which one would you choose? As you see, they're basic definitions. A need is what people must have to live. I included some ideas behind there. Some of you may have small brothers and sisters that just got done taking a bottle. Clothes we need. Shelter we need. Homes. And then food as well. What do we want, on the other hand? Things that we would like to have, but we know we probably can live without. Video games. Believe it or not, we can live without video games. We can live without toys for smaller children. We can live without candy or other types of vices that we have. You can live without Twitter or your cell phone if you had to. Why do I bring this up? Because this idea of needs and wants, believe it or not, is an economic decision. A lot of times it comes down to what can we afford? If I were to give you $20 right now and say go out and buy 2 things that you need and 2 things that you want, may not seem impossible, but we know we need food. We can spend $10 or $15 on 2 meals. But what's left? Can we go out and buy that $50 or $60 video game? Probably not. And this is what we have to decide. Our economic choice. The idea that we make an economic choice when you only have money for certain items. Not all of them. If I were to give you an unlimited amount of money, there would be no economic choice. But when you go out and you get a job, let's fast forward 4 years from now. You're graduating college or getting ready to go into your senior year. And you start to think about what you're going to do with your life. Some of you are going to go off and go to graduate school or go to medical school or go to law school. Some of you are going to go off into the real world and be on a relatively fixed income when you first get your job. You're going to have your basic necessities, your needs. Whatever's left over will be your economic choice on how you want to spend it. To put it in simpler terms, the example shows you a perfect idea of this. I do not have enough money for both popcorn and a pretzel, and I must choose. Therefore, I buy the popcorn because that's what's more appealing to me. That, in its essence, is an economic choice. Hopefully it's delicious. So we have this idea of an economic choice, but we also know what's my opportunity cost. An opportunity cost is what you must give up when you make that economic choice.